Have you ever wondered if all the religions of the world are basically the same? You know, for all the talk of us living in a secular age, we actually live in an increasingly religious and spiritual age. Survey after survey after survey has shown that religion and faith and spirituality and all those things are growing, and in fact the number of people in the world who would describe themselves as secular or atheists are actually shrinking. Even that's true here in the UK with changing belief patterns, immigration and so on has shaken things up. Well, given the fact that's the case, and given the fact there are all these different religions and belief systems sloshing around, how do we navigate that world? Well, the answer that I think many people have reached for, realizing there seem to be all these different belief systems out there, is to reach for this idea of saying, well, maybe they all believe essentially the same thing. Maybe that's a very sort of gentle, progressive, tolerant way of sort of affirming and hugging everybody. But does it work? Well, I suggest not, and let me show you why with an illustration. Imagine I was to announce to you that I have just discovered the power of reading. You know, until now I've been a TV and a Netflix guy, but I've just discovered this amazing thing called books, and you can use them for more than just swatting wasps. And I've started frequenting the local library or the local bookstore, and I've read, oh gosh, I must have read 4 or 5 books in the last couple of weeks, and I've discovered something. I've actually discovered that every book is essentially the same. You know, booksellers may try and tell you there's differences between them, but that's a con, it's a trick to try and sell you more stuff. Every book in the world is essentially the same book. Now, if I was to say that to you and you were to figure out I was being serious in what I said, I guess you'd draw one of two conclusions. You'd either conclude I'd lost it, I'd lost the plot and just was stark staring bonkers, or you'd conclude that, you know what, I haven't actually done enough reading, because if I'd read more widely, I would quickly have discovered there are huge differences between the millions of books that have been written. And I would say actually you'd be right. And the same applies when it comes to religion and spirituality and belief. If someone says to me, oh, I think the world's religions are essentially the same, what that tells me is they haven't actually bothered studying any of them in detail, because when you do, when you actually sit down and talk with people of different faith backgrounds, you very quickly discover massive differences. And that therefore raises a couple of questions. Firstly, how do we think about those differences? How do we understand what's being claimed? And then how do we actually know what's true? Well, let me really focus in this video on the first question. How do we really compare the world's different religions and what they teach? Well, let me share with you 4 questions that I found profoundly helpful in the 30 years I've been thinking about comparative religion. When you're talking to somebody from a different belief to yours, whether it's a faith tradition or even atheism, you can ask them, do you believe in God? And if so, what do you think God is like? You can ask them, what do you think human beings are? What does it mean to be human? You can ask them, what do you think has gone wrong with the world? What's the cause of all the very obvious problems in our world? And then lastly, you can say, well, given those problems, what do you think the solution is? And trust me, as you ask those 4 questions to different faith traditions, you will discover huge differences. And then you can begin thinking about, well, which answers are the most compelling? Which seem to line up with what seems to be true as I put them to the test? And for the Christian answer to those 4 questions, what is God like? Who are we? What's gone wrong with the world? What's the solution? Check out some of the other resources, videos and articles we have right here on the SOLAS website that will help you think more about those big questions.